Tonight I'm here to introduce two proposals, one for Itani Park design and another one for the Indian Hills Park designs. And Itani Park is 0.8 acres, just under an acre park. Its location is over on Itani Drive and Rolling Hills Drive, and we'll show you where that's at on the map here in a second. And this was this property was obtained through parkland dedication. And here is what it looks like. It's blue. I haven't quite figured out how we got there, but anyway, it's a pretty color for a park. But anyway, this right now, this aerial it's a little dated. This road is already paved. There are already some houses being built on that, and there's also a pathway, if you can see the cursor there, going north right along the edge of this property. That's actually part of the park. And move on one. Whoops, wrong one. Forward. Okay. The process that we used for both of these parks, for this planning process, of course, we advertised as much as we possibly could. We sent letters directly to the residents that were in the general area of each of these parks to give the residents their we really wanted their input on this, since it's close to their homes and properties as well as the general public. And so we met in the first workshop in May, then took input, had the groups were broken, or the workshop, the attendees to the workshop were broken into groups, and they each worked on their own ideas on what they thought the park should look like. And then the landscape architects took that information and worked on a conceptual design. Then we came back for a second workshop, worked through it again, and then had a third workshop and came up with a preferred design based on what they had come up with before. And then there were still some other changes that happened through that workshop. The final design was presented to the Parks and Recreation Commission in July, and they recommended adoption by the City Council. I brought this through Public Works Finance Committee last week at the September 14th meeting, and their recommendation was for adoption. And of course, you have tonight. Site analysis. This is a process that landscape architects use. You just look at the property and just what are the characteristics of the property and the surroundings, and so you can get an idea where things should be or shouldn't be. Here you can see where the sun typically rotates around. You can see where the winds are. They have slopes on there, lots of scribbles. And of course, north is just a little bit straight up, but just a little off to the right there. And Blaine, or I say Itani Drive, is just to the south there, and fits in there very nicely. This was, I wanted to throw these in. It's not to embarrass anybody or anything like that. It was just really cool how this process went. This was from one of the groups, and how they thought that this design should start to materialize. Something that's hard to see through these aerials is right about through here where this cursor is. There's some overhead power lines. So we had some limitations up front on what kind of things could go under those. And here was another group's design and the third group's design. And out of that, this was the preferred design based on what the architects thought could be used. And that's bringing in the limitations of the site and the topography. And as you can see, we've got playground areas, and you've got a restroom and a pavilion area. You've got a little bit of a walking path going around through the west, some field area, and it's a gentle slope, but enough kind of a taut area for a sledding hill in the wintertime. So using that preferred site, we went through it again with the groups, and they made several changes to that, sizes of the shelter, where it was at, the playgrounds, instead of split, combined, a little bit of change to that court area that you saw, and ensuring that we had maintenance access, things like that. Then came up with this design, and this is still preliminary, and so the groups reviewed this and had a few more changes to go through after this. And you can see this one, they added in a half-court basketball. Really wanted to make sure that the big concern was the circulation, the walkway, everything was usable through there. On the original, it didn't seem like it really was. And in the end, this is what we ended up with. Yeah, playground area, this both tot lot and larger playground for larger kids, as well as swing sets off to the right. The pathway, even though it is it meanders, it basically follows the pathway of the overhead lines to take advantage of that limitation. And you do still have the pavilion and restroom facility, as well as the court areas. It's split out a little bit differently. Kept the sledding hill and the pathway around the outer edges, as well as, of course, the landscaping. And with that, here comes the fun part. Total, and this is estimated and based on the conceptual design at $575,000. And of course, this is the same, except it has the details on it. Of course, tonight wasn't to decide how to pay for this. It's hard to decide that until you know what it is that you're going to try to pay for. Of course, different ways to take care of this would be through bonding, phasing through the general fund, donations, of course, and grants, anything that you can find. A lot of that stuff is getting very difficult to come across on the grants. Trails, things like that are still kind of a hot item. Restrooms, some of these higher cost items, they're just really difficult to get monies for. So with that, that is Itani, and this is the conceptual plan that we're asking you to consider and adopt tonight.
Wayne, this was heard in front of Public Works and Finance.
It was, Mr. Mayor, thank you. And actually, Dwight combined this one as well as Indian Hills in the same report, because essentially concepts are all the same. We were very pleased with the process that was involved in the design of these parks, the public process, the public input that was utilized. Obviously, there's always the concerns about how to fund it. The comment was made about is this a Cadillac design, and it's really not, but it's an extremely usable design. And so Public Works and Finance was in favor of moving forward and accepting this design.
Yeah?
Dwight, have we moved to, I don't even know if it's germane to the discussion, but to the rubberized mat for all the playground structure areas now?
Yes.
So all parks are going to move that direction, all existing, but all new ones will have that in it to start with?
Yes.
How, what's the lifespan of that?
Well, I don't know if I have an ending lifespan for you, but I can use as an example. I started using these in Kansas City, and we're talking 18 years ago, and I've talked to their public works director, and this is an area that has high humidity, high heat, floods, freezing, snows, floods, tornadoes. You name it, they have every kind of weather you can imagine there, and they have not had to replace a single mat. Now, sometimes, when you underneath the swing set, where you have a school, for example, that use these, they have to put a secondary mat on there because they drag their feet. But I asked specifically about under the swing sets that we had put in, and he had not had to put any new mats in. And we do these, there's different ways to do this. It's a pour in place where you have one giant piece of rubber, or in our case, we use the tiles so that if you need to, you could just replace a tile, not a major chunk, and it also looks like it still fits there. Where a pour in place, it looks like you've had to patch.
Right.
And the reason that we went to the mats or these tiles, for a lot of reasons. It's a little spendy up front, but for example, the wood chips, they're safety, right? And if you go to just about any playground on this planet that has wood chips, underneath swings or around any of the slides, they're all kicked out. Well, those are doing zero benefit for safety. And you almost have to hire a full-time maintenance person just to keep those chips raked in every day. So this takes out the human equation. So you have the safety factor there 24/7. And they hold up well in the freezing. They use them in Alaska, and they hold up well in the heat. And so other than going through once in a while, depending on where they're at with the debris and stuff, they can wash it off, blow it off. And so you have covered your citizens and not to mention your liabilities, 24/7 with this.
Yeah, like you say, that gives you a lot more upfront cost, but hopefully we're seeing the benefit of that later through maintenance
Yes,
throughout
not
the
to
year.
mention maintenance. You just don't have to put in the maintenance.
Following up on Dan and Dwight's conversation, those mats, whether they're tile or whether they're single piece, are not just laid on the ground.
Correct.
They're laid on a concrete slab. So that adds to the cost of doing them.
Yes.
I presume it's, 4 inches thick or something, and
Yeah, well, it depends, but yes, 4 inches is your standard for your higher.
reinforced concrete pad with these glued on top.
Yes.
Other questions for Dwight? Okay, how would the council like that? Dan?
Well, I'll make a motion that we go ahead and adopt this conceptual design.
I second that.
Okay, we got a motion by Dan and a second by Art to accept and adopt the Itani Park conceptual design. I'll start the roll with John.
Excuse me, aye.
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 And I.